Welcome back to the channel, friends. I am the hostess with the mostest, Nicole, and I am the designer behind SewGnar Sewing Patterns. If you're here, you probably already know that, but if you're new here, welcome. Today's video is a bittersweet one. This will be my last video in this studio. I'm not sure how long you've been following me, but for the last 6 years, 6.5 years, whoa, just kicked something under my desk. For the last 6.5 years, I have been broadcasting my channel from this exact space. This has been my backdrop forever. And this is it. This is the last video. Brandon and I bought a house. We're going back to whence we came whenever we first met. We met in Greenville, South Carolina. We still have lots of friends there. So we're going back. I'm reporting for auntie duty. My best friend is having a baby, like literally any day now. She was due several days ago. But I am reporting for duty. Brandon got a new job at a new tattoo shop, and we are just really excited to step back into those relationships that we used to, they were like our besties. I turned 21 in Greenville, and those friendships that you forged during those late nights and early mornings of working, like service industry. Yeah, I'm going back to those friends. So, no more videos in this studio. I have no idea what the new studio will look like. I don't know if I'll keep it as crazy. Certainly there's going to be black somewhere. Yeah, I'm really excited. It's bigger. It's a bigger space. It's got carpet, so I'm going to have to use trash cans, but I'll learn. I'll get better at that. But anywho, so today's video, let's get there, huh? So today's video is a throwback. I haven't made one of these bags in so long, but one of my nearest and dearest friends from even longer, from way even before Greenville days, she just placed an order for a Cami Crossbody bag. And I had a lot of fun dusting off this pattern. It has been far too long. And so some of the amendments that I made is I do recessed strap anchors. I do rolled handles, which are really fun. I love the way that they look. And then, I quilted the bottom here. I also did not piece the bottom. The original pattern pieces have you cut 2 sections, but I show you how to make this one section so that you don't have a bottom seam here. And I think that's really it. I used my strap anchor hardware that's on my website rather than make strap anchors. Link for that will be below, as well as the link for the bag pattern. Pop over to Georgia Girl Stitches, get this, check out her other patterns. She has lots and lots of leather patterns, so if you're a leather worker, check that out for sure. I used cork from Fabric Funhouse, flex foam in the bottom for the structure. I used Decaville Light for my interfacing. I lined it with Anna Maria Horner's coneflowers, echinacea, same thing, I'm not sure. I used a cork tag from Heartwood and Hyde, and I go over all the other stuff in the video, so without further ado, enjoy. Let's get started. I have my full lineup over here, and I'm going to work out of order. If you're new here, welcome, but I almost never follow the actual pattern, but we will get there in the end. So the first thing I'm going to do is all of my prep work, and I like to do that in the beginning because then at the end you don't have to make a strap or worry about any of the random last minute things. So I'm going to grab my zipper overlay template. We'll work on this first. I'm going to cut out this inside box here. And I did so good about getting everything prepped off camera and forgot about the most important thing. Now you can cut this using the template. You can use your rotary blade on the inside of it. I just find it's a little bit easier for me to do it this way. I just like to mark with my template that I showed in the cutting video. But obviously the rotary blade is a little too big to do these corners. So always come back in with my scissors. And because this pocket is going to be getting a lot of action, I am going to finish the edges using some Mod Podge. So what I'm doing now is just burning off my little fuzzies from the cork. And this is an optional step. Of course, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I made bags for years and didn't do this, but now it's just kind of common practice for me to do it. So I've just got regular old Mod Podge. It's matte. I have my edge paint roller. And then I'm just gonna do a quick little coat on all of my raw edges. And I apologize, but if you can hear my neighbor's dog, she's got 2 little yappy dogs, and they are just going to town right now. Something about a barking dog, just the incessant sound just drives me up a wall. If you follow me, then you might know that I am moving soon. Brandon and I bought a house. By the time this video comes out, we will probably already be, in the middle of the move. But all that to say that I'm excited about not living next to a yapping dog. She actually has 3 of them, but one in particular just goes for it all day long. We have her with the little dogs on one side of our house, and then we've got our other neighbor on the other side with his big dogs. We've got big barkers and little barkers. And of course, my dogs bark too. You guys know that, but not all day long. I would not be able to deal with it if they did. All right, I'm gonna speed this up and we're gonna get this coated all the way around. All right, so next things to prep, I'm going to grab my strap anchors. I have 4. If you need to, you can mark a line right down the center. So since they're 2 inches wide, you're gonna mark 1 inch. But I'm going to just go in with my tape, and I'm using my 1/2 inch tape here, and I'm just gonna put it, eyeball it right down the center. Just do that for all 4. Now, if you don't have tape, that's totally fine. You will just mark your centers and then fold in and clip. But the longer I use double stick tape, the happier I am with it. Okay, so just gonna peel. You're gonna fold each short edge in toward the center, just like so. Repeat on all 4. I like to throw a clip on just to make sure it doesn't come undone. Next, I will prep my handles. So same scenario, I am actually going to make this mark here, so that way I know that I am correct on this. because these are going to be my rolled handles. I do not want to mess these up. So I'm marking 1 inch. Tape right down the center, and I'm going to treat these the same exact way that I just did my strap anchors. All right, now for these, because they're going to be rolled, I left a slight gap in through here just to help whenever I'm folding. But so what I'm going to do first is I need to mark on both short ends where I'm going to stop my stitch lines, which I will explain once we get further into the process. But for now, I'm going to make marks at 2.5 inches from all of my short edges here. Two and a half. And then take some clips, and I'm just gonna fold to where I'm, oh, actually I'm not gonna do that yet. I'm gonna leave them just like this. Put those to the side. Now I'm gonna repeat that same process for my crossbody strap, except I'm not gonna make any marks at the bottom edge. So I'm gonna speed this up again, just because it's monotonous. Okay, so I just went ahead and I finished off the strap. And the big difference here from the handles to the strap is that I got these two pieces as close together. So I'm trying to mask that fold as much as possible. But I'm not super concerned with people noticing it. It's going to be on the inside of the strap whenever the strap is done. So yes, got the strap folded and done. The next prep work that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the front pocket, the front slip pocket, the exterior, as well as the front slip pocket lining. And then I'm going to lay them wrong sides together, just like that. You can glue, tape, whatever you'd like to do here. Because I've got the tape handy, I'm just going to put some strips down in through here. Where my scissors go. Because this cotton is interfaced, I'm not concerned with it shifting around as much as I would be in a normal or in any of my other construction videos that you might have seen. So I'm just putting enough tape here to hold this into place. If the paper will come off, here we go. And so I didn't want to interface this piece as well, because then this whole section would be like super thick, and or not so much thick, but it would just be super stiff. And I just didn't feel that that was necessary, because this one has deckability and then both of the exterior panels do as well. I think that this will work out great. And so I'm just paying attention. I'm lining up my top edge here. And then just like that, pretty simple, straightforward. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this lining piece, this front pocket, what's it called? I wrote overlay. I don't know that that's what it's called, but I am going to drape this over this raw edge to encase it and create a nice visual statement there. So remember, I cut mine to be wider than the pattern suggests, and that's so that whenever I go and fold it around my raw edge here, I'm going to have one side, so I know the lighting is a little funky right now, it's kind of dusky, but I'm going to have one side be shorter than the other. Don't know if you can see, there we go. And I'm going to put the short side on the outside of my pocket, and the long side will go on the inside. And then when I'm stitching it, I'm going to stitch from the right side, and then I'll know for sure that I'm catching this back edge here. Otherwise, if you fold it directly in half, if there's any sort of shifting or movement, then you stand to sew right off the edge of your cork, and I don't really want to do that. So I also just remembered that because this pocket is going to be raw, I'm going to go ahead and finish off at least one side, and that will be the side that goes to the outside of the bag. So the side that gets taped onto this section. So I'm going to go ahead and mark first so that I know which side to finish. And so because this is 1.25, that would be 3/4 of an inch would be halfway. And I know that I don't want 3/4, so I'm going to go right at 5/8 of an inch and run my line. Oh wait. No, 5/8 is halfway. I'm a dum-dum. So I'm going to run a line at at half an inch. Gosh, the light is really weird in here for me too. It's like reflecting off everything. Okay, so now I know that this side where my 1/2 inch is, this is the side that I need to finish, because that's the side that's going to be going on the outside of the pocket. So I'm going to grab my Mod Podge again. And then finish off this edge here. Luckily, the Mod Podge does dry fairly quick. So what I'm going to do now is put some tape here on both sides of my line. And I'm going to be using, what is this? 1/4 inch tape. Now, if you have a finicky machine and it doesn't like to sew through tape, you might want to glue or just clip. Otherwise, just be really aware of where you're putting your tape. Or not otherwise, but if you have a finicky machine, just be aware of where you're putting your tape. Keep it out of your seam line. My machine tends to do pretty okay with double stick tape, so I am just putting 2 pieces of tape here along the top and bottom raw edges. Now, another thing that I like to do is I'm going to fold and finger press right on that mark that I made earlier, just to kind of train the cork so that whenever I encase the raw edge, it doesn't want to give me guff. Now, another way that you can do that is you can take your ruler and line it up exactly on that line that we already drew. Hold it tight, and then you can apply pressure on this side. So it's going to be creating that crease onto the cork. I just like to rub my nail across it. And then it kind of gives me the guideline to where I can fold and really finger press it. Alrighty. Now, if you're using a directional fabric, make sure that this is on the right end. So I will peel off my wider side. So this is the side that's going to go to the back. And I'm going to, with my pocket right side up, I'm going to lay it just under my line. I mean a smidge, a 1/16 of an inch. Because if you put it right on that line, whenever you go to fold, it's going to pull this side up. So give it a little bit of breathing room there. Go see, so you can see how I left it up just a touch. Apply some pressure. And then peel off this tape and drape it over. Toss a couple clips on there just to keep everything stuck together. And then I think the last thing that we need to do to prep is grab one of your linings. Oh, it's not the last thing, but we'll figure that out in a minute. But grab one of your linings and your zipper overlay, and we need to glue this, or tape glue, whatever, into place on the inside of our lining here. I'm going to grab a fun tag. Now this bag is for one of my oldest friends. I've known her for 21 years. And I know that because her son just turned 21 a couple days ago, and I met her when he was an infant. And she and I have had some really, really good times together. So I'm wondering, I think I'm going to put on this Stay Wild tag right there. Just a reminder where she came from. All right, so to get this going, I'm going to put some 1/4-inch tape on the wrong side of my zipper overlay. And I'm just going to check the placement. So because this is such a graphic print here, I just want to check my placement, see which one I like it on better. Because this, if you lay them like this, see how you can see they're offset? I think this other one might be better. It might be more centered, might look more centered. And I'm going to very carefully line it up, this top edge of my zipper overlay touching my ruler. And I'm counting in on the side. This is how I'm centering it without measuring. And so I know that I've got the same amount of distance here on both sides. Then once it's exactly where it needs to be, just go back and add some more pressure. And then now I'm going to add my Stay Wild tag. The last thing left to prep is going to be the bottom quilting, but that will take some time to design our quilt. So let's go prep all of this stuff, and then when we get done with this, I'll do the base. So you're going to gather everything that we've just prepped. We're going to take this lining over to the machine. We're going to stitch around just the exterior, and then we're going to stitch down our cork tag. We have 4 strap anchors. And I'm going to stitch just around all of the perimeters on all 4 of those. We have our crossbody strap. And on this one, I'm going to stitch with it folded side up, so where that seam is, so I can see it. And I'm going to stitch not only around all 4 of the long exterior edges, I'm also going to stitch on both sides of that fold right there. So then whenever the strap is done on the front, there will be 4 stitch lines. I really love the way that that looks. And then on the handles, what we're going to do first is I'm going to stitch on the inside just along this folded edge, just like I'm going to do here, but I'm not going to do the outside yet. I'm just going to stitch along the center lines. And then finally, I'm going to stitch just across the bottom of the outside of this pocket, and then I'm going to baste everything else into place. All right, I'm using size 4-ish stitch length. I am using, let's see, size swag Tex 45 in the color Dark Night, so it's black, and size 18 needle. And here we go. All right, so before we pop back over, we're gonna go ahead and finish our rolled handle. So the marks that we made at the 2.5 inches, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold my rolled handle over and clip starting at that 2.5 inch mark and just go all the way down until you get to the other 2.5 inch mark. And then repeat that for the other handle as well. This might take a little bit of maneuvering just to kind of fold the handles, but you want to make sure that your two folded edges are meeting up nicely. And then what we're going to do is, starting at the 2.5 inch mark, we are going to stitch 1/8 seam allowance, and we need to be very careful that we're locking in our stitches really well here. We're going to stitch all the way down until we get to this bottom 2.5 inch mark, and we're going to do that for both handles. The next thing that we are going to work on is we're going to attach our front pocket that we made to one of your front pocket panels. Pick one, they should be the same at this point. Now I had noticed that whenever I interfaced one of these, it had, yep, see, so I have like a glue line right here. So I'm going to cover that up with my front pocket. And so pretty simple, you're just going to lay it along, and you want, what I'm really paying attention to is I want this top line to be straight. So I'm going to lay my panel along one of my ruler lines like that. And then I'm going to lay this on top, being sure to align. So over here, this meets up right there and to that side. And then just clip it. And then now, before I go stitch this into place, I'm gonna mark, because I want this to be into 2 slip pockets. So I'm gonna make a couple lines here down the center. Where's my pen? Here it is. So since I have it centered, I'm just going to find my center and I'm going to mark. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 lines of stitching just so that it's really reinforced. And I'm not going to stitch up onto this black band here. I'm just going to stitch to just below it, and then I'm going to rivet at the top. So that way, when the client is putting stuff in and out of this pocket, it doesn't pop those stitches right there. So here's my center line. And so with my center line, I'm going to bring my ruler over 1/8 of an inch on either side, and then just make a couple marks. And then I'm going to do that on the other side as well. So here are the 2 lines. So when I stitch, I'm going to stitch up one side across and then back down. Then I'm also going to baste along the sides and the bottom. Now I'm not doing contrast stitching, so I went ahead and switched out my top thread so that it would match this natural color cork. And whenever I get to this second line, so here's my first marks here, I'm going to go to the second line and start my stitch line to go up. So I'm just carefully connecting those dots. And then I'm stopping right below that black contrast color band. Stitching across to where I meet up with the second line here, and then stitching down. And then now I can continue my base stitch across the bottom and up the side. Grabbed my hole punch, and then I'm just going to go right above my stitches, right there in the center, and punch a hole right on that mark, or right on the band. So now to complete this front panel, we need to add our tag, which I'm going to put right in this area. And then we also need to add where our recessed strap anchors are going to go. So I have all that hardware and then my strap anchors, and then I also have my name tag. I'm going to put my tag on first. I'm going to flip it so that I can see it and centered for me. And what I'm looking at is I want it to be about a ½ inch above, but I don't want to go super high because then I might run into some issues whenever I'm stitching my zipper into place. And so basically just going to measure up about 3/8 of an inch and mark that center point. And then I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And so I bent my prongs out, and then once I figure out where exactly I want it, I'm just I'm pushing down to create pressure to make some notches in the cork. And if it's kind of hard to see because of your cork, just lift it up. You can generally tell like where the light hits it. So there are my 2 marks. So I'm just going to use my X-Acto blade. And then of course make sure you're installing it to where it's facing the right direction. There we go, looks good. I forgot to grab my washer. So my tags come with these metal washers. I'm just going to put that like so. And then there we go. Now that is in place. So the next thing that we need to measure is where our recessed straps are going to go. And I like mine to be 7 inches from the outer edges here and about 1.25 inches down. So I'm going to measure. It's easier when I have it facing me so that way I can see exactly where my measurements are. So I know that that's my center line there. So I'm going to measure 3.5 inches over and 1.25 inch down from that center mark. So 3.5 by 1.25. So I know that my first strap anchor needs to go there. And then so 7. And then if you want to, you can measure just to be sure. So from your center line, I have mine 1, 2, 3.5 inches. That's correct. And then half, 1, 2, 3. So that's correct. And then I'm also just going to double check my placement that it's 1.25 inches down, and it is. So once you have all that confirmed, you can make your slices. And then now I'm going to take my strap anchor, and so I want to set it to where the opening where we folded it in. So I want the flat side to be right side down on the cork panel on the exterior. I'm going to slide it in. Like that. Repeat for this guy here. And then measuring, I want it to overhang the top of my panel about 1/4 inch. So you can just double check your measurements here. That one looks good. That one looks good. Once you have that into place, set that aside, and we're going to repeat that on this other panel here. So find your center. Measure 3.5 over and 1.25 down. So half, 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3. repeat the process. So you're going to make your slices. There we go. And then slide your anchors into place. And then let's measure. This one's out a little far, so scooch that guy down. And then that one's good over there. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is go to the machine and we are going to stitch just above this notch here. So just above 1/8 of a seam allowance on both, and then repeat for this side over here. And actually, before I go, I'm gonna mark where I want my rivets to go, because once we get the hardware in, this is really thick hardware, so once we get this all bent up and around to get it into place, it might be hard to get an accurate measurement of where we need our rivets to be set. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. And so on this zipper overlay template, I provide a 1-inch double rivet and then 1.5 inch, but I'm gonna use the 1 inch because I'm using 1-inch straps. And if you want to, you could just do one rivet, which actually, now that I think about it, I'm just gonna do the one rivet. It'll be easier because this is so thick with the interfacing. I don't really wanna have to fight with this. So I'm just going to do, where'd my pen go? Here it is. 1 inch in the, or one rivet in the center. And I'm gonna mark it 3/8 of an inch down, right in the center line there. And do the same over here. And then now I know, once I start maneuvering and moving stuff around, that I know exactly, or I know that those are going to be correct measurements. So 3/8 of an inch. I'm lining up the 3/8 right on this cut line here to get this measurement. And then I'm centering my 1-inch strap right there, like so. Okay, so now that I have those marks made, I'm going to go and stitch above the cut lines just across on all four. Right, so this is what you should have here. And the reason that we stitch above is because we need to leave this bottom section open so that when we attach the, or when we slide the hardware on here, we can loop it and this excess will go down into that open stitch, or down into that open cut, which is exactly what we're gonna do now. So I like to make sure that the part of the hardware that's not welded goes down. And this can be a little bit squirrely, you kind of have to finagle it. So I'm just gonna slide my rectangle ring on, and then I like to kind of pinch, and then I'll fold the panel down out of the way, and then just kind of tuck in as best as possible. And you can see it starts to come through the back here. Just pull on it, and then right now it's facing upward, and then you're just gonna flip it to where it's all facing down. And then it looks a little something like that. Then just repeat on all fours, or on the rest of the anchors. And so you want these to be taut, but you don't want to have to be you don't want to pull and push on this so much to where it makes the rest of the panel wavy. So just do it to where it lays naturally, and they should tuck up nicely, be nice and taut, but not, you know, super tight. Now because this is a self-healing edge textile, it doesn't matter that the raw edge is right here. Now if you were doing this panel and you were making this out of woven, you would have to handle this a little differently. This method only works on self-healing edge, so cork, vinyl, leather, things like that. So once you get them in place and you're happy with where they're at, we're going to go through and we're going to punch those holes that we marked previously and set a rivet in there. And so this size here, these are 9mm posts and 9mm heads. And so you can see here how much, if you can, how much of it is actually sticking up. And so I want to put something there to pad that a little bit because that's a lot of post length that's sticking out. And so usually when I have this happen, I just find some scrap. And so I'm just tripling this up here. Gonna punch a hole. And cut it, and then I'll just put this right on top to give it some more coverage for that post length. And so now, if you can tell, it's not sticking up nearly as far, and I'll be sure that the rivet sets correctly. Now we just need to set these into place and those will be all done. The reason you want to be really careful with these rivets specifically, especially because I'm just doing one of them, is this is where the bulk of the weight is going to be held from. And so you want to be sure that these rivets set exactly how they're supposed to. Otherwise, if they're offset, whenever the client is holding the bag or whenever they, put the entire kitchen sink in it, I can rest assured knowing that these rivets are not going to pop out of place. I know that we haven't finished our lining pocket yet, but because we're almost to the point of attaching to create the exterior, the actual bag itself, I'm just going to work on this whenever we start working on the lining. So we'll do that in a little bit. But right now, let's quilt the bottom panel. So I have the base and I have my foam here. And what I need to do first, before I draw out my lines, I need to cut out, because remember this piece was intended to be two pieces put together, but I cut it as one big piece. So I need to flip and mark out what will become my boxed bottoms down here. Oops. So working on the short side, I'm going to find my center. And then using the measurements provided in the pattern, I'm going to use that center line and mark out what would have originally been the boxed bottom. So this would have been on one panel, and then now I'm going to mark out on this panel, or on this side. And then that combined will become the entire boxed bottom. So repeat that over here. Now that I have that figured out, I can cut these squares out. We need to replicate that on what will be this foam section. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it, leaving a nice seam allowance all around, but not measuring. I'm not worried about getting too precious. And I'm just going to trace onto the foam. And then now I know if I cut in a ½ inch or thereabouts on the inside of this line that I just marked, that it will fit nicely and it'll stay out of the seam allowance. It's a little close over here, but I always use a 1/4 inch seam allowance anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. But if you end up using a 3/8 or a 1/2 inch seam allowance, you're gonna wanna bump it in to where it is cohesive, to where you're not gonna get some of it stuck in the seam allowance and some of it not. So I'll just go ahead and notch this out a little bit more. The pattern originally calls for a much larger seam allowance, but I just always use a 1/4 inch. And when you're making bags, generally speaking, as long as you mirror the same seam allowance throughout the whole bag, you should be okay. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So now that we have the foam cut and we have our base cut, we can mark out our quilting lines. Now, because this is black cork, I'm not going to use the silver marking pen. I'm going to use chalk. It wipes off a lot easier. So I'm just lining up my edges, all my top side, you know, all that jazz. And then I'm just going to pick. There's no rhyme or reason to this, but so if I come over 3 inches on this top edge, I know that I need to make the line come to 3 inches on this bottom edge. So that is what I'm going to do. And then in order to make it the same, I'm going to match that. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to come down to 1, 2, 3. And then once you get your 2 guidelines, they can be at any direction that they want to be. You can do diamonds, you can do hearts. I mean, you could do whatever you want. But just be aware that this section here is going to show on the front of the bag. But once you get your 2 first guidelines, then you can figure out if you want to do a traditional style quilting. So I like to call that the waffle. And then you could do like a 1 inch waffle, 1.5, 2 inches. I'm going to go with 1.5 inch. And so what I did is I just laid, using this as my guideline, I measured over 1.5 inches and marked the second line, and so on and so forth. Now, the more narrow your waffle, the more quilt lines you're going to have to do, but the more secure your foam is going to be to your bottom panel. Got our grid figured out, and now what we need to do is attach our foam to the back. You can use tape, glue. I really like to use basting spray, but I think my basting spray has seen better days. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue on the wrong side here and just put enough glue into place to keep the foam. Another option is you can tack your foam into place, and then you can interface some fusible interfacing on top of it. And that keeps it exactly where you want it to be, and it adds an additional layer of stability on the base. There we go. So now I'm going to go to the machine, and I'm just going to stitch across every single line, and I will meet you back over here. So this is how it turned out. I love the way that quilting looks on cork. Looks so cool. So if you wanted to, if you find that this isn't like as structured as you'd like, at this point you can add some interfacing on the back if you want to. It's totally up to you. Really, stabilizer and interfacing I feel like is a very personal preference. Some people like soft bags. Some people like super structured bags that they know are, you know, going to still be able to maintain their weight after a lot of use. So it's really just up to you. You could, if you wanted to, do a contrast bottom that would only be at the very bottom of the bag. I'm not going to cover that in today's video, but you can go back and watch my Taste Steel Tote Sew Along. I add a contrast bottom, and it's the same idea. You just need to measure how long this is by how wide this is, and then you need to add your contrast bottom. The way that I would do that is I would double the width and then fold it in on itself just like we did the straps, and then I would stitch it into place right there, and then it's perfect on the bottom. So if you want to, you can trim down your threads like you just saw me doing. It's totally up to you. They will expose themselves later if they need to be trimmed, so I'm not going to spend too much time doing it. Instead, we're going to move right along to the next step. So right side up, right side down. Along the bottom, you're going to clip one of your exteriors into place, lining up your base and your exterior. And then we're going to go stitch across the bottom. Oh, missed that one. And so you can use this side if you want to, or you can stitch from this side. But what we're going to do is stitch all across the whole bottom, and then we're going to flip this panel up and then leave the excess folded down toward the base, and then we're going to stitch along here. I think it's going to be toward the base. That's my estimate right now. We might end up flipping it up. We'll see. But so do this, but when you go to your machine, bring your other panel as well, because we're going to repeat that for the other side. I'm going to fold this. Yep, so it's just a lot easier of a fold because we don't have any foam in the seam allowance. Whenever you fold it down, it naturally wants to stay folded down. So I'm going to do that, finger press it. I'm going to swivel it around, and then I'm going to stitch right on top of this base, 1/8 of an inch. You could do 1 stitch line, you could do 2, really dealer's choice here, do whatever you want. It is up to you. I think that looks great. So I'm just going to leave it at the 1, and then I'm going to take my second panel, and again, being sure that I'm using, or I'm lining up my bottom edge, I'm going to lay these together, clip into place, and then stitch just like before. Again, I'm going to flip this whole panel and finger press the seam allowance and then stitch across just like before. Couldn't tell, the bag is really starting to take its form now. It's looking so good. But so the next step for the exterior is going to be adding the zipper, so we do need to go ahead and finish off our lining. So I'm going to move this to the side for now. Grab my 2 pocket panels and the panel that has my zipper. You can also add like slip pockets here. You can add a second zipper panel, pocket rather. You can do whatever you want to these linings. I just tend to do 1 interior zipper pocket, and my client didn't ask for anything else, so we're rolling with it. So at this point, you should have stitched all the way around the perimeter of your zipper overlay. And now we need to slice right down the center, only through the fabric. And we need to cut this lining out of place. Need to trim it where we don't see it from the front of the panel anymore. You just want to be really careful not to cut into your zipper overlay at this point. And we have all that tape in here, so just be really careful, take your time, and trim. Once you can't see it from the front, we are ready to add the zipper tape. So you're going to take your shorter zipper tape And we need to add our pull. So I'm just going to burn the edges here. I really hacked that side up. Grab one zipper pull, add that. Okay, and then I'm going to grab some double stick tape. And I wasn't really able to salvage a lot of it, so I'm going to add a new strip, and I'm going to come above where my new stitch line will be. So I'm basically lining up my double stick tape with my stitch line from the perimeter that I sewed before. And I'm just going to come all the way around. Like so. And so if you can, this will now keep your tape out of your stitch line, and it'll just be one less thing that you have to worry about whenever you're sewing in your zipper tape. Yeah. My tape's peeling up. There we go. Okay. So peel off your paper, and then I'm going to lay out my zipper tape. Probably could have dealt with ironing this a little bit, but we're going to roll with it. I'm also going to put it in this way so that I can see what I'm doing. And when I add my zipper pull, I like to try to keep this end still zipped, so that way it's an accurate representation of what the pull or what the tape is going to look like after it's inserted. So once you get it aligned how you like it with your zipper teeth centered nicely, apply some pressure to make sure that your tape is really sticking. And this is close to what you should have here. And now I'm going to go back and add another piece of tape just along the bottom. And this I'm doing right over the bottom edge of the zipper tape. And I will go ahead and add my tape to the top section here, but we're not going to be peeling that off yet. So we've got two pieces of zipper tape. They're covering up the ends of the raw ends of the actual zipper tape, or two pieces of double stick tape covering up the ends of the zipper tape. So now we're just going to peel off just the bottom. And you're going to take one of your pockets, and because mine is directional, I'm going to make sure that the top of my panel is facing the bottom of the zipper tape like this. So right now, this direction is going in the opposite of this direction, because once we sew it and we flip it, it'll be right side up. So stick this into place, and then we're going to go to the machine, and we're going to stitch just along. We're going to start right here on this flat edge. We're going to go just along the bottom edge. We're not going to stitch up the sides at all. I picked this up from Saya and Amber from the Crafty Reporter, so we're just going to stitch along this bottom flat edge. But bring your other panel, because we're going to attach it and finish this while we're over at the machine. Nice long threads, because we're going to be tying this off. And I'm going to stitch just along that bottom edge. And so I'm using a Teflon foot, and if I'm doing everything correctly, what should happen is the left side of my Teflon foot should rest right along the bottom of my zipper teeth here. So that's what I'm looking for. Stretch so that you have nice long threads. Pull to the back and tie off. Okay, we're going to leave these tails long and just kind of tuck them there toward the center. I'm gonna zip up my tape so that way nothing is moving around on the front side. And what I'm going to do is flip this, finger pressing it as I go down and out of the way, just like so. And so now we have a nice folded edge on the inside. And I'm going to peel my top tape off. And I'm going to lay with the right side of my panel going toward the top of this panel here. And I'm looking at, sorry, I hope you can see what I'm doing over here. So I've got this right side up, and I'm looking at lining up this top panel to where this bottom panel is. And then I'm laying it across that piece of tape here across the top of the zipper. So it looks like that. And then so now from the front, what we're going to do is we're going to start our stitch line over here. We're going to go up the side, across the top, and then back down, and we're going to tie off again. So be sure to leave long tails. But really, if you're using coordinating thread, you can backstitch here. It's totally up to you. So to get started, I need to move my pool out of the way, give myself some breathing room here. And I'm doing my best to line up where this stitch line along the bottom stopped and then where this one is going to start. I actually did end up backstitching there because it does make me a little nervous not backstitching over the zipper teeth. People are so rough with their stuff. If I wasn't using black thread on black cork though, I definitely would have tied off. All right, so now from the front, our zipper panel is done, our zipper pocket. If you unzip, when you look in, everything should be the correct orientation down in there. And to finish off the pocket, from the front side, we're going to peel up and over. We're going to stitch down. And I'm not going to stitch all the way across the bottom, but what I am going to do is stitch over about an inch and then down, sewing an L. I'm going to leave a hole here along the bottom. This won't be our bag birthing hole, but this will be, we're going to birth it through the bottom, and then we'll close up the bottom birthing hole through here. So we're going to leave a hole here and then come back up this side and close up this area. But you got to be aware of any excess here before you start stitching, so that way you know that you're actually stitching on the panel. Okay, so from the front, pull up that side, and I really like to stitch right over the zipper teeth here too, just for more added security. Lots of back stitching here. I made this when I first started stitching down. I went a little bit too far, so I backed up and created about 3/8 of an inch right there. All right, and then do that over here. Any of the threads that I tied off, I'm going to leave long and pull down here toward the center. I don't really want to mess with those too much. I don't love the tie-off method. I don't really trust it. Totally. But anywho, that's what you should have along the back side here. You should have a completed pocket. And then when you look down in, ta-da! We are now to the section where we need to create a 90-degree zipper fold before we make our zipper sandwiches. So I put this technique that I learned on Instagram in one of my recent videos, but basically instead of pulling it apart and holding it and folding it and burning it and stitching it and doing that method, what you do is with the zipper right side up, you fold it over on itself about 1/2 of an inch. And you can see that my ends here are not perfectly aligned. That's totally fine. But I'm going to just fold it over about 1/2 inch. And then holding it and being very careful, I'm going to stitch from this corner up here, the raw edge here, the one that's being folded, add a diagonal to the zipper teeth, and I'm going to jump over the zipper teeth and then continue and sew at another diagonal so that my stitch lines are a V. And then what's going to happen is as soon as you flip it back over, it'll be a nice perfectly folded zipper end tape, and then we'll add our pull, and then we'll create our zipper sandwich with the lining and the exterior. So I'm going to go to the machine and do that, and I will show you. And if you need another version, check out one of my most recent videos, because it's in there somewhere. Probably, oh hell, I don't remember. And I lied, it's not 90 degrees. I accidentally folded mine a little bit farther, but it doesn't matter. As long as it's folded and sewn, stitched correctly, you should have nice edges there. And now I'm going to put on my zipper pull. And it'll stop exactly where it needs to stop, right there. Okay. So you're gonna grab your exterior. It's all one piece now. And then I'm gonna start with my front, the front side of my bag. And just as a general practice, because I generally only put one pocket on the inside, I always put that to the back of the bag. So I'm gonna get my lining that doesn't have anything on it and move the other side out of the way. Face this panel toward me. Now I'm going to have my zipper pull open from the left side of the bag when the bag is complete. So I need to make a couple marks here, and these are going to be my start and stop lines for my zipper tape. So with the marking pen, I'm going to mark, I'm not sure what Joy has it as in the pattern, but I am going to do 1.5 inches. So that's going to be where I stitch the zipper starting and then ending. And then they'll have this 1.5 inch gap, and then of course that's going to go down about 1 inch or 1/2 inch after seam allowances whenever we sew the bag shut. So I'm just going to put some double stick tape. I'm using 1/8 inch double stick tape here right across this top raw edge in between those two marks that I just made. And I'm going to take my zipper tape and lay it right side down with my folded edge at this top left corner up here. And if it's easier for you, you can put something on the back here. You can stitch it into place so your pull doesn't come off, or you can use a clip, whatever. And then unzip your zipper tape so you get a nice flat lay. And you're going to line up on this first line over here, this fold that we just stitched into place with our zipper teeth. And then being careful to line up and make it as straight as possible, I'm laying my tape, my zipper tape right across this line of double stick tape. Once I get that into place, and trim this little rogue thread I've got here, I'm going to put a line of double stick tape across the entire top of this panel, right across, up and over the zipper teeth there. Oh, and I ran out, but I knew that was going to happen. So I have my reinforcements right here. Now when I get to this other side over here, this other second mark, I'm going to pull my zipper teeth down and out of the way and kind of hold it, and then I'm going to continue my tape right across and over this other end. So make sure it's stuck down well, and peel the paper. Let's try from here. Okay, and then we're going to right side down, sandwich the zipper in between our two outermost layers, lining up this top raw edge and sticking it into place. Now we're going to take this to our machine and we're going to stitch across, and then I'm going to show you when I get over there. But first things first is we're going to go stitch these together. I always like to stitch my cork side up, so I'm going to stitch across, and when I hit these 1.5 inch marks, like the end of the zipper here and this 1.5 inch line here, I'm going to do a few back stitches. And to make it easier, I'm going to make a little mark here so that I know where to add my back stitches. So in theory, my zipper should be trailing off right about here. And so I'm going to back stitch so that this is nice and sturdy. And then I'm going to back stitch well over here on this end too. Here we go, this is what we're working with. One side done, one side ready to go. So we are going to do the same thing. I need to mark my start and stop lines here. So 1.5, that was a little long. Just need a little tiny mark. Doesn't need to go across the whole panel. And then we need our double stick tape. All right, so now before I peel this and make it sticky, I want to come back over here and I'm going to zip this back up just so that way I know that my zipper tape is not twisted on me. Now that it's not twisted, now that it is zipped up and I know that it's got the correct layout, I can peel my tape and I'm going to stick my tape onto the double stick tape just like before. And I'm going to start here with my fold. Now, because my zipper tape wasn't even whenever I added my stitches to make the 90 degrees, it's got a dog ear up here. But I am going to lay this panel onto this panel on the raw edge of the zipper, not the raw edge up here that's been folded. So some things that you can look for is you want the sides, you want the edges of your exterior panels to line up, and in a perfect world, what should happen is where you created this 90-degree fold, that should meet up at that line, your start and stop line over here. So I'm just kind of keeping a finger over here, making sure that my sides line up, and then I'm gently putting one little spot into place. I'm going to pivot so that I can see exactly what I'm doing. And then I'm adding a little bit of tautness to the zipper tape so that it doesn't wave on me. I want it to be nice and taut and not come out like a car dealership wavy guy at the end. And so if you need to adjust, do it. Best to do all of those adjustments now while you can, than having to come back and unpick stitches, because that sucks. So again, I'm here to this other side. I'm just going to move my clip there. Put some pressure, make sure everything is really nice and my sides are meeting up, so everything looks good. Now I can go back and add my second line of tape. And if you don't have tape, you can be using glue, you can use clips. It's just tape or glue definitely make this process a lot easier. So if you're new to sewing or new to bag making and you don't have these tools, I would definitely suggest giving them a go because they make this so much easier. All right, once you get that into place, peel the backing off, grab your remaining lining panel, and I like to do this so it's facing me so that I can see exactly where all my raw edges are, and then just layer on down. Okay, there we go. So go back to the machine. We're gonna do the same thing as before. From the cork side, I'm gonna stitch all the way across, being sure to add some extra stay stitches over my zipper, and then I'm gonna flip and top stitch. It will be a little bit different of a process because everything is all connected now, but we will get it done. All right, we are moving right along at this point, and now what you're going to do is make it to where your alignment is both of your exteriors, both of your linings. leave your bag unzipped, but you can zip it up a touch. It doesn't need to be all the way unzipped anymore. Unzip it about halfway. And I'm going to start by lining up my side edges here. My top, this will effectively be my top seam. Okay. I'll put a clip on either side like that. And then going down, what should happen, what we want to happen is we want these two seams to meet up, which I'll be darned. Not too bad there. So I'm going to just add some clips here, hold everything into place. Once I get the exterior on that side, I'm going to flip to this side. I'm going to pull my zipper down and out of the way and do the same over here. Well, hot damn, they both meet up. Okie dokie. And now we can do our linings, but I have not cut out my lining box bottoms yet, so I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. Just trying to make sure that my zipper tape is not within this clip here. So whenever I do box bottoms, on the linings, I always make them a 1/4 inch smaller than my box bottoms that are on the outside. At least a 1/4 inch, if not an eighth of an inch. And you could do that by cutting them bigger or smaller rather, cutting them smaller or using a smaller seam allowance when you're stitching these together. And the reason that I do that, or bigger seam allowance, gosh. But the reason that I do that is so that, because if this bag, essentially we're making 2 bags, right? And then we're putting the 2 bags together. So if the inside bag is the same exact size as the outside bag, they're not gonna mesh together well. They're not gonna nest well. The inside bag needs to be slightly smaller. So that's why I tapered my sides in the beginning when I was cutting everything out. And I'm going to make these just a touch smaller as well. Because again, if the box bottom is the same exact size as the box bottom down here, it's just gonna be like wrinkly in there. And I don't want that. So you're gonna take the box bottom calculation or measurement rather, from the pattern, and what I'm going to do is make it a 1/4 inch smaller on this side. Like so. And I'm going to put a couple clips in here first before I trim these boxes out of here, so that way nothing shifts around on me. When you are tapering and making the inside bag smaller than the outside bag, you just want to be aware of the measurements as you're doing it and of your seam allowance as you're doing it. If you're cutting off a taper to make the inside bag smaller, then you're not going to make your seam allowance larger as well, because you can make this inside bag way too small, and what will happen is when you put stuff in the inside into the lining, it will it doesn't sit correctly on the bottom of this bag, so it will pull down the top seam. So you just want to be aware of everything when you're doing this. I never recommend doing more than a 1/4 inch at a time. You can always flip the bag out several times and keep tapering it. But until you become adept at this process, I don't recommend just going full bore into it. Just start small, and you can always chip away a little bit until you get a nice, neat fit on the lining. I hope that wasn't confusing. Anyhoozle. So I am going to leave a big turning hole here on the bottom lining. And remember, we did leave a turning hole here, but we're going to use this turning hole in the pocket to close up this turning hole after we get everything sewn together. But so I'm going to leave a big turning hole here on the lining, and then I'm going to stitch up. I'm going to do the box touch technique that Lauren Mormino taught me. Stitch up, across, and I'm going to not do the box technique here because this is solid piece. So I'm just gonna stitch across the side to about there and then mimic that over there. Then we're gonna box our bottoms. We're gonna flip our right side out. We're gonna close up our turning holes. We will be almost done. Now before we flip this right side out, there are a couple things that we can do. We can trim down these lining pieces here. We can trim down our pocket for later. And what I want to do is, because like I said earlier, this bag is for one of my oldest friends, being that she is older than me, haha, but I've known her for so long. So I want to sign the inside of the bag. And because this is the interfaced cork, I'm confident that this won't bleed through. And if it does, I'll be sure, I'll do it on the side that has the pocket. So that way if it ever did bleed through, it would only come through on the inside of the pocket and she'll never even notice. I want to just write her a little love note. Here we go. Dear Abby. Okay, so a lot of times I would trim down this lining section here. So I am going to do that actually. And I'm not super concerned with getting it to be like an exact measurement because it is tapered. What should happen is it still should nest nicely in there even with the seams. And because I already sew at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, there's really not a whole lot for me to snip off. But if you're sewing at a 1/2 or 3/8, I would definitely recommend trimming your edges down. Now I don't like to really mess with my line or with my exterior side, but I am just going to make sure that they're all the same width. And that feels okay. All right. I will trim down my little pocket edge here. It'll make this rest nicer when I go to stitch that down later. Oh, okay. All right, so now we get to do the fun part of flipping the bag right side out, and I'm going to do that through the big bottom hole here. Beautiful. I just wanted to do a test fit of my lining before I stitch up my birthing holes because I wanted to make sure that it fits nicely down in there. And as you can see, I have no slouching. It's a nice, good fit in there. I can feel these corners are resting really nicely into the exterior corners. There's no like gapping or just like slouchiness in there, which is what I'm after. So now that I have the fit exactly how I like it, well, and all that being said, if I got to this place and there was like the lining fit weird, I would flip it right side or back out, wrong side out, and I would start that taper process on the lining until it fit like this. But once you get the fit that you want, then you're going to put your hand through the pocket opening, and you're going to grab the inside lining down at the bottom and pull it up through here. And this feels very like alien and sounds really alien to explain until you do it. And once you do it, you're like, oh, okay, that's how that works. So you're going to reach in, and what I'm trying to grab is my interior, these are my interior box bottoms. So I'm trying to pull both of those out to where I can get a good visual on them. And now I'm going to lay my lining pieces right sides together, which is how they want to lay anyways, but I'm being extra careful to make sure that they're laying properly and that there's no bubbling or anything funky going on. And I'm just going to work my way across, pulling it taut until I get to the other box bottom. So it's not a flat straight line, but it is still all nicely laid exactly where it's supposed to be. So I'm gonna go to the machine and I'm gonna start right here and I'm gonna stitch across until I meet up on this side. It looks kind of like a tortellini. Yum. Now we just need to tuck our pocket lining back into our pocket. To finish up the bag, all we need to do is add our handles and then add our side anchors. I'm gonna go ahead and add the side anchors first, just so that way I don't have two handles flip-flopping around and being in the way. And for this, if you remember, oh yeah, we also have to finish off our zipper. Actually, let's do that first. So I'm going to zip up my zipper tape here. Have a rogue thread. Bye-bye. Okay, so I'm gonna trim my zipper tape so that it's even. And then burn it. All right, put one piece of tape along the bottom. Fold it into thirds. Should look like so. You're going to take your zipper end cap and just slide it in. If you want to, you can certainly add some glue in here. I do not find it as necessary, but you do whatever you like. I just like to slide it in until it won't go in anymore. Grab a mini screwdriver and a screw. Screw it in along the bottom here. You can kind of tug on it, make sure it's in place. That feels great. So I am just going to kind of pull. So whenever I don't stitch, or whenever I never stitch my linings, but whenever I stitch around the, what am I trying to say here? So there are two ways to do bags, right? So you can top stitch like I did in the video. You can top stitch each panel as you make it, and then you put them together and sew the lining exterior together, or you would not top stitch in the order that I did it, and you would be top stitching at this point. And what I'm trying to say is that whenever I do bags this way, where I top stitch the panels as I'm making the bag, the lining kind of always wants to peekaboo out of the top. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It can actually be quite cute on the right bag because it just provides like a little peekaboo of what's inside. But generally, whenever I am adding my side connectors, what I like to do is kind of roll that lining back down into the bag. I'm just gonna clip it into place here and do the same on this side. And now because this side is the closed zipper and it's quite short, I'm gonna do this side first, so that way I can get the hard part out of the way. And if I need to adjust my measurements at all, I can do that before trying to do the easy side. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of pull the zipper out of the way. And basically all I'm doing is I'm just gonna lay these on the side and just kind of feel out, suss out exactly where do I want them to lay. So I think that they'll be good about half to where the top of the hardware is a 1/2 inch from the top. So once you figure out where you want to put it, you're going to mark your punch holes. And then make sure they're even, because mine are not. And then I'm just going to repeat that over here. Now, if you are better at just measuring it, go for it. You do whatever you'd like. I'm gonna do it this way. So once I actually punch my holes, they're gonna be closer to 3/4 of an inch down from the top because the hardware is so large. Yep, so it's 3/4 from the top. That's where I went. I'm going to punch my holes over here. Now, if you want to, you can put washers on the inside of your bag. I'm not going to. I'm just going to be using my bigger capped rivets. At least that's the plan. So, ensuring that the D-ring is on the hardware, I'm going to lay the post through the hardware and then insert it through the lining and add a cap and repeat for this other side. Now there's a lot going on right here with the zipper, the pull, and the 2 clips, so just take your time. Gosh, my nails are so long too that dealing with rivets is kind of a pain in the butt. These are my real nails too. Oh my gosh. I was a terrible nail biter for a really, really long time. I didn't stop biting my nails until probably 5 or 6 years ago, but it was like gross how bad I bit my nails. So it's kind of wild that they're so long. They get so long that they break. Crazy, crazy. All right, so let's get this side punched. Okay, so same thing, make sure that you put your D-ring onto the hardware. Okay, get out our trusty press and press these rivets into place. Okay, couldn't be more simple. Now what I like to do is just kind of shape the bag, and because there's so many layers of interfacing in through here, it's going to hold decently well. I don't know if you can, the camera's picking up on how sharp of a fold this tends to be. But I just kind of shape it like that. I will go back after I'm done videoing and I'll iron everything too. I'll give the inside a nice press. And then if there's any areas of cork that look a little funky, like down and through here, I will just steam those to inflate or like swell the cork up. There we go, there's that. Okay, let's go put our handles on and finish our strap. Let's actually finish our strap first, right? Usually I would have finished it a long time ago, but I forgot. So there are two sides on your strap. The one side where you started, and that's where all of your little extra threads are, and the side that you just stitched right through. I like to have this one be the nice side, so the side that is not going to be folded and tucked around the hardware. So this side that has the little strings is the side that I'm going to tuck around my tri-slide. Just going to knit my corners here. Okay, so I'm going to put this up and over the middle section of my hardware. And then now, because I did the 4 stitch lines, I know that I need one rivet to be on this side and one rivet to be in that channel there. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. Rebel without a cause, you know me. But if you want to, you can totally measure where you want your rivets to go. Now the side that is exposed, that is going to be the inside of my strap. So I'm holding it so that the strap doesn't twist, and I'm going to grab one of my lobster clasps and I'm going to loop the inside of the hardware, so the flat side, not the clip, onto this section here. And thank goodness I did not pay attention to this when I was doing it, but happy accident that I riveted the strap the right way, because my inner seam line is enclosed. Okay, so I'm sliding that all the way to the top. Again, being sure that my strap is not twisted, I'm going to come up and over that middle section. And because we folded it in that way, when the bag is in use, this raw edge here will be tucked nicely inside, so you're just going to see the 2 rivets. So you should have a nice, you know, shape here. If it's twisted at all, you will notice it at this point. And then again, I'm going to take the inside of my hardware, so the flat section, and I'm going to lay it to the inside of my strap and fold it up and over. I'm going to knit my little corners here so that they look like the other side. And then we're going to do the same thing, just add a couple of rivets and press those into place. Now, of course, if you want to, you can add some stitching here. I have found in my experience that whenever I'm trying to stitch close to hardware, it's always wonky, so I just prefer the look of rivets. And if they're pressed correctly, then they will be stronger than some stitch lines, in my opinion. Okay. Now our strap is done. We can move that to the side, and then once we get our handles put on, now we won't have to make a stupid strap. It'll just be ready to clip on. Okay, so you're going to grab one of your handles. You want the folded edge to be facing out toward you. That is the right side of the strap. And so I'm going to, with the folded edge toward me, flip it, lay it so that it's right sides together with the bag. You're going to slide it through your hardware and then just roll it up and over. And I like to just add a clip just to get everything laid out correctly. So again, just make sure that you're not twisting it. You should be coming in with the split side of your handle like so. Then you can just kind of lay eyes on it. Make sure everything looks good. Once you're happy with how everything is, I'm going to go back. Again, you can mark it if you want to. I am going to eyeball it. But the biggest thing with this is you want to make sure that this section that you folded in and up is not shifting around. You want it to be just as wide as the strap itself. I'm just going to make the strap as flat as possible. Clip it on both sides like that. And then using this front stitch as my guideline, I'm going to punch one hole right there in the center. cute. Okay, one down, one to go. So again, I'm just making sure that this side of my strap, sorry, no, it's black cork, hard to see. This side of my strap, I'm just kind of laying it flat and tucking in this other side to where it lays nicely. Cool. Just going to rivet these into place. And now we're going to do that to this other side. So same thing, make sure that the rounded edge is facing the bag. Put the raw edge through, up and over. I'm going to clip it into place for now. And this part is important. So after you do your first handle, that's the one that sets the length, right? So you want to make sure that when you attach your second handle that it feels like it's of equal proportion. Like you don't want one to be taller than the other. So best way that I have found to practice that is just kind of put it on your arm and, you know, carry it. Make sure that it feels correct. And if it doesn't, then make some adjustments. You can even zip the bag up. Yeah, so that feels pretty good to me. And so now I know that I can punch the holes and get these rivets set and we'll be good to go. Okay, so when I zip the bag up, I noticed that it's because these side anchors are so flat, it's just not the exact look I want. So I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna bend these side anchors just a touch so that it has a more natural flow on the bag. So I'm just gonna start small. I just barely angled them. So I'm just gonna mirror that on this side and see how I like it. And then just keep making adjustments until I get it to exactly where I want it. That's a lot better. I like that a lot better. Great, well that didn't take much, did it? Okay, so now we're ready for our strap. Dun, 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 dun. May I please present to you Miss Cami Crossbody by Georgia Girl Stitches. What a cutie. I hope that y'all enjoyed this bag pattern as much as I enjoyed making it. Please leave me a comment, like, subscribe, share, blah, 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 blah. You guys know all that. BS. I will see y'all in the new studio. Bye.